So, have you ever felt like your needs just aren't being met in a relationship? And you can't really tell if these are needs or if these are fears that are driving them, and what should matter and what shouldn't matter, and what should be a priority and what shouldn't be, and what should I be focusing on? And really just the confusion of all of it. So if that's you, I'm going to cover that today, deciphering our needs versus our fears and what's driving the feelings underneath those. So if you're new here, I'm Ketra Thompson, and I'm a certified master hypnotist and a relationship recovery coach, focusing on attachment style so that you can get to the heart of what's driving your behavior, because the reality is that our subconscious mind is controlling over 95% of everything we think, feel, and do. So I help my clients go back on a subconscious level to address those feelings where they were created and reframe the belief around them so that you can function in a different way. So if you'd like to learn more about that, you can check out the links in the description below, where you can set up a completely complimentary phone call so that we can get you some clarity. We can get to the heart of what's going on and hopefully create an action plan that's really a good fit for you. So check that out. Anyway, I'd like to talk about this topic because I think we get really confused sometimes, thinking my needs aren't being met. And some of those needs might be fear-driven. So let's just talk a little bit about that. So what healthy needs in a relationship might look like. Let me give you some examples. So you might need the ability to have shared experiences. That translates into quality time. You might need emotional depth. That's sharing how you feel about one another and then being able to talk about that, having those in-depth conversations. You might need a willingness from you and the other person to be willing to grow and learn. So that is a level of curiosity. And you might need to have a shared vision of the future. Whether you're in a dating relationship, especially in a dating relationship, you want to have the same future goals. Even if you don't know if it's going to be with that person you're with or not, you want to know what you want and be able to share that. And then, of course, even inside of a marriage, you want to have some shared goals. You want the vision for your future to be on the same track. And so it's obvious that you also want to have compatibility around intimacy. So you can have all these boxes checked and then not have any chemistry or attraction. And I mentioned that one specifically because sometimes we put a lot of weight on the chemistry and attraction, and we don't look at the fact that maybe even though there's a lot of that, some other stuff that's really important is missing. And the chemistry and attraction can grow as long as there is some there. It's important that it's there. It can grow when you've created more depth. So basically, this is where words and actions meet each other, where they are consistent with each other. That is the healthy dynamic of focusing on what's good for you in a relationship and what those needs are. Now, the fears that might be driving them might disguise themselves as needs, but in reality, they are more centered around control and jealousy. They might be around fear of being alone or having this all or nothing mentality. If you're not all in, then you have to be all out. And sometimes that's applicable depending on the topic that it's about. You might have this fear around the way you think the world needs to see you or perceive you as masculine or feminine, or in some way you're holding up a mask to make sure the world has a certain vision of you. And that's fear-driven as well. So fears are being driven by the subconscious programming. And we want to be able to decipher what is it that you really want and need, what is important to you, versus what is the mask I'm wearing or the fear-driven behaviors that are actually programming that other people installed into my brain based on my life experiences, especially as a child. If I didn't have my needs met, if I have abandonment wounds, if I have attachment wounds, even in adult life, sometimes those things can be very traumatic. If you had a traumatic relationship that really rocked your world and your sense of self, those create fears around it happening again. And so it can create a pattern of maybe pulling away too soon, or shutting someone out too quickly without being curious, or not being vulnerable and open in the first place. So in reality, our fears are sometimes driving this list of, well, if they aren't going to do this, then I can't be with that person. We want to slow that down. We want to dial that back, because what we're assuming their intentions are might not be accurate. So you want to definitely do a few things to slow this down. First, you want to take a time out when your fears are triggered. Even if you've acted in a way that you didn't want to act, you still want to, at some point, whenever you have realization about it, call a timeout, take a break, and get some clarity within yourself. Ask yourself, when's the first time I felt this way? Especially under the age of 18, what is this about? Is this fear that's driving my behavior old fear? Is it present? If it's really present in this situation, then there's some action steps I need to take if there's valid fear. But if it's old, I need to put it in the context of what it's really about. And then I want you to take the step of actually getting curious and expressing to your partner what's going on inside of you, what you need, and making that request. So all of that process becomes a lot easier once we address the underlying triggers that are driving these fears. So the underlying triggers are happening on a subconscious level. You're not aware of it. It's happening on autopilot because you've always had it there. You probably can't remember a time that you didn't have it. And it feels normal and it feels natural. But the reality is that it's probably programming that someone else put in you, or that you interpreted someone else's behavior through a very small lens of life experience. And so you've created beliefs in your subconscious mind that are, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, they're going to leave. And it creates self-sabotage, it creates knee-jerk responses, it creates reactions that you didn't want to have happen. And ultimately, it creates breaks in your connection, in your relationship. So getting underneath the fear is really, really important. And then returning back to the fact that you know what you need. So when these fears are coming up, you take the break, you get self-reflective, but then when you're in a calm, clear state, you ask yourself honestly, are my needs being met? What are my needs? What is most important to me? And I know personally myself, that took a little time to clarify. And after having been in a really toxic relationship, I knew what meant the most to me was someone's integrity, was someone's willingness to be kind and thoughtful and a really genuinely good person, but someone who wasn't trying to exhibit manipulation or control over me, someone who wasn't just out for themselves, that really wanted to be a team player. And then I had to further define what that looks like. So in some of the examples I gave you, shared experiences, emotional depth, the willingness to learn and grow together, all of these things came from that awareness of what I want in another person. And then you add on to that the other layers of I need playfulness. I need the ability to be myself. All of these can feel like a lot. So when there's fear present, we don't want that fear to trigger us into behaving in a way that's going to completely throw everything out the window of what we have in this relationship, if it really is meeting a lot of our needs. And so I want to encourage you to slow down the process. And of course, the best way to get to the heart of that is in the hypnotherapy process, because in that process, we can go back on a subconscious level. We can reframe the belief that's driving that fear trigger in you so that you can give it a new definition, a new meaning, a new story, and it creates this ability for you to function in a new way. So that's what I do with my clients. We go through this in-depth process in my program of one-on-one custom hypnosis to address the things that are driving our unwanted behaviors. And so we can create that change around it. Now, it doesn't mean you're never going to ever struggle with any triggering behavior again in your life. You probably will on some level, but it's not going to be as intense. you're going to have so much more self-awareness around it, and you're going to have the ability to repair so much easier. So if that's something you're interested in, again, I'd encourage you to check out that link in the description below. And if this is something that you feel like is sabotaging your relationships, this fear that's created this bigness in your mind so that you feel like it's just too much, I have to take action, I would encourage you to really slow that process down as much as possible. Take a break. Even if you have to communicate with your partner that you need a couple days because you need some downtime or time to process, I would encourage you to take that, to be self-reflective, to really get honest with yourself about where those fears are coming from, where you first felt them, and what your actual need is around those fears. So if it's an abandonment wound, for example, I'm afraid that I'm going to be abandoned or left. Okay, what would help you feel better in that? What would help you feel more safe and secure? It's going to be different for everyone, depending on the relationship you're in. But you might ask yourself that, and it might be, oh, I need to be able to communicate about my feelings more often with my partner. I need to be able to have more frequent communication. I need to have a deeper level of communication. I need to know where I stand with them. I need them to be able to articulate to me where I stand and how they feel, so I'm not over here guessing and having my nervous system going crazy. Once you have the clarity on whatever it is that you need, even if the need is, I need a little more space for myself and my own hobbies or interests, that's okay too. Being able to get clarity on the need allows you to express that need in a really clear way, not making it the other person's fault, but just being really vulnerable that this is a need I have, because we're always doing that healing work when we're being self-reflective. So expressing the need and then asking for it to be met. Here's how I'd like to see that happen. Here, I would like this amount of communication. I'd love for you to be able to share these thoughts and feelings with me. Or even saying, can you help me find a way that we can meet this need together? Can you brainstorm with me? That's a really great way to take the conversation as well. And if you find that you're with someone who just refuses to meet that need or to listen or to hold space for that, now you've got another decision to make. Is this someone you can build with and learn with and grow with? And if it's not, then maybe the decision is to move on. But I would recommend that you take that information in and you take your time making that decision so it doesn't become this knee-jerk response and this knee-jerk reaction to that pain point being triggered, because that pain is like this old wound that hasn't fully healed. It's like the scab keeps getting ripped off of it. And so until you are able to reframe that and change the patterns around that, it may not fully feel healed and you may not feel the ability to go on without those triggers happening. So anyway, I hope that helps in discerning the needs versus fears. And really, sometimes when we feel this overwhelming need, it can be driven from our attachment style, from our childhood, from our experiences. And the need is, I need to feel safe. I need to push that person away. I need to run, or whatever that is. And it might not actually be the real need underneath it. The real need might be something that you can communicate in a more specific way. So slow it down, take your time. And when something has gone wrong and you haven't handled it the way that you'd like, I'd encourage you to step into the repair process of acknowledging what you didn't do right and asking if you can have a conversation about doing things differently moving forward. Because at the heart of every relationship is the need for the ability to communicate. And if you're in the kind of relationship that cannot communicate, or the other person is not willing to have the conversation, then you need to decide if that's something that you can actually live with long term. So if this content resonates with you, I would greatly appreciate it if you would click like and subscribe. That way you can be notified every time I post a new video. And also, I appreciate it when you leave your comments and let me know what resonated with you, what you'd like me to go a little deeper about, what topics you'd like to hear about in the future. So feel free to do that in the comments below. And until next time, I hope you curate a life by your own design.